peace that surpasses all understanding. I don't feel very peaceful right now. Um, there's times, most of the time, when I do a share, it's because I feel intuitively guided to do a share. It feels right. And today is not one of those times. I feel myself in a lot of resistance about wanting to share, so therefore I'm sharing because I don't want to. I don't want to share, so that's why I'm doing it. Um, and I think you'll figure it out pretty quick. Impotence. Um, this is something that's been progressively, and just to give you, an idea, I'll be 55. I'll be 55 in October. But this started a long time ago. Oh, a long time ago. 2009. 2009. And hold on 1 second. I really like having this in the background, the music, the tones, but it's a little bit too loud. Um, the awareness that I've come to through losing the ability, and it started around 2009. I was told that it was a result of Lyme disease. Lyme disease, you get the Lyme disease, but frequently, I can't remember what the percentage rates are, but it's a fair amount of people that have Lyme disease end up with chronic issues, or from the Lyme disease, and the jury's out on whether it was the Lyme disease or all the medications and vaccines that I took after that, to cure it. And but let's get right into it. So around 2009, that happened. I was very sick for about 9 months. I come out of the Lyme disease, whatever, and within a very relatively short period of time after that, within the first year or two, I started noticing certain things like my joints were really starting to bother me, and whatever, what would be diagnosed as rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid is autoimmune, your nervous system, whereas osteo is time, unforeseen occurrence, and damage. Um, so rheumatoid is autoimmune, and apparently this is common with Lyme disease. But what I started noticing was insensitivity. Insensitivity. I was doing a lot of work outside, and like construction, heavy equipment, digging trenches. Sometimes I was using the equipment, and sometimes I was down in that hole. Middle of winter, it didn't matter. And the guys that, aren't you cold? And I'm like, well, no, not really. Well, you should be. And I noticed a loss of sensation in my especially in my fingertips, but in my fingers. And the way they diagnosed it was your extremities, uh, through neurological damage and neuropathy via the Lyme disease. And again, I'm going to repeat, I'm not sure it was the Lyme disease or the vaccines and the treatment afterward which caused which. Um, but your extremities. So my nose, my ears, my fingers, my toes, my feet, and my genitals, the extremities of your body. And it's not like, I wouldn't describe it as, your arm falls asleep. It's not that kind of, it doesn't tingle. You just can't feel like heat sensitive. I'm trying to describe, it's almost like there's no feeling there. And you know, and it's progressively gotten worse. Where it was sporadic, 2009, 2010, I divorced my former wife. We were divorced in 2013. Not because of that. I'm sure on some level it might have played a factor. Um, it might have played a factor, but where I really noticed it was shortly after our divorce, where now there's a certain aspect of that where it could be an emotional response. We had a very difficult, very we had a traumatic divorce, and the period after it was traumatic. And I'm not going to go into detail, but it was much worse than what one would normally experience in a normal divorce. And there was a certain aspect of that where I believed my sexual impotence was a result of the trauma, the emotional trauma. Um, and I just kind of chalked it up to that, and I didn't think about it much. You know, it'll all all spring back over time. Once I've processed and healed and forgiven, um, I'll spring back into action. I was wrong. I was wrong. Um, and in the relationships that I had, relationships, there was more than one, but there wasn't. Um, it was an issue. It was an issue because I could not feel. I could not feel anymore. And someone might say, "Oh, have you tried the little blue pill or Cialis, Viagra, whatever, whatever, whatever?" And I did, and there was no result. There was no result, and I only seemed to experience. What it does is it creates blood flow to that appendage, to your genitals, Viagra, Cialis, and it makes it gives you the opportunity upon arousal to become aroused and erect. Cialis and Viagra, that stuff, it didn't work. It didn't work. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel anything. Um, I mean, I can still feel when I absolutely, because that's not the extremity part. When I have to urinate, that's your bladder. That's your bladder telling you that you have to, and your bladder is interior. Um, the extremities of your body are numb. So it's been a hard pill to swallow. It's been a hard pill to swallow. My options. Let's just say I was inclined to do something. Um, my only option would be there is a procedure that they can perform where they actually insert a balloon, an inflatable, into the penis, and it's it's kind of like Nike. There was a gentleman I talked to, and he's like, "Yep, this is how it works," and it was kind of like a pair of Nike Air sneakers where you pump the pump and it creates an erection. I was like, that's a bit invasive, not to mention the fact that my issues aren't blood flow, it's sensation. It's sensation. I can't feel anything. And in the relationships that I've had since, let's just say, because that's when it started, 2013. I went for quite a period of time, post divorce from my former wife, where I was completely and utterly single. A minimum of probably 18 months to 2 years. It was 2 years. January of 2015, I met someone, and I explained. And now this is where it goes. This is where it goes. I wanted to be a considerate lover, but I was also transparent and forthcoming about what I was experiencing. And despite the chemistry or lack of chemistry, whatever the relationship, that initial relationship that I was in, um, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work, and that's an issue. That's an issue for people, for a woman, for a guy. Imagine yourself being told, let's say as a guy, I'm interested in a woman, and a woman kind of explains to me or expresses to me that vaginal intercourse is no longer um, an available way of expressing sexuality. As a guy, I would consider that. It wouldn't be the be all end all, um, but I would consider that. For instance, I'm thinking of one particular situation. A woman that I knew, a friend of mine, post she had given birth, and after she gave birth, her uterus dropped, and it happens. It's relatively common, and for her, she was very open and honest and transparent about it. Intercourse was extremely painful for her, extremely painful, where she was not really interested in it. But as a guy, and that was something that she had expressed, that the guy would either have to be extraordinarily gentle or have to be okay without having intercourse because it was such an uncomfortable, unpleasant experience for her. And whereas a guy, um, you know, being a guy who can't perform, um, or achieve and or maintain an erection, when a woman that might be romantically interested hears that, and this was a real experience I had roughly a year ago. It was shortly before all the nonsense going on in the world that we experienced over the last year. It was shortly before that, and it was somebody I had met years ago, and we had a friendship, and I was single, she was single last year, whatever, and she was planning a trip out to Maine, where I live. This is where we had met, and she had moved to Washington and was planning a visit back. And we started chatting up, and well, I'm going to be, she mentioned that I'm going to be out in Maine for this X period of time, and it'd be nice if we could get together and have a date, whatever. And there was attraction, but as the trip was approaching, probably 2 weeks before, well, a month before when we first started talking, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Let's try this. Let's try that. And we were comfortable and familiar with one another, and we started talking, not gratuitously talking about sex, but certain aspects of what we found attractive about one another. And the conversation, there was some sexual aspects to it about what the expectation was when she was coming to visit, and and whatever. But in that moment, I was like, in the spirit of transparency, I expressed to her what my limitations were sexually. And I explained to her why, much in the same respect that I just explained to you guys how and why and wherefore and etc. And she was incredible about it. She was wonderful, um, compassionate, thoughtful, kind, um, continued to be engaging. However, about 2 weeks prior to her flight, about 2 weeks prior, we were chat. Oh, you're coming? Yep. And she said, I appreciate your transparency and being honest with me, but that is something that is important to me. Um, and I understand. I get it. I get it. I shared this conversation with somebody, a friend of mine, and this experience with a friend of mine recently. The reason I'm talking about it, it's just because it's weighing. It's really just weighing on me. And when something is weighing on us that heavily, especially such kind of like a delicate thing, I have no recollection of any man in my life, a mature man, a man in his senior years, other than they're resentful about it. I don't think about it anymore. Or on the flip side of it, they've lost the physical ability, but they become dirty old men, and they express their sexuality in very aggressive, very inappropriate ways, and that's not it's difficult to have somebody to bounce these things off of, especially another guy, because it's such a delicate subject and nobody wants to talk about it. Hence, that's why I'm talking about it, but it is a delicate subject. It hurts. It's I by no means consider myself out of the game. I still have a considerable amount of what I would refer to as sexual energy. I am still very much attracted to women. Um, uh, and this is where this is going. There's a silver lining to every cloud. It has been deeply depressing where I can't even seem to muster the courage to ask someone out. Or I've had experiences over the last year, even with all the nonsense going on, where women have expressed interest in me on a romantic level, and I politely, but whatever, I don't even go there. I don't even go there because I know I'm going to have that conversation. And frankly, why would I want to keep setting myself up for rejection? It's depressing. Now, that being said, again, imagine someone telling you you can't, all right? You can't. And it, like, even the prospect of finding someone where initially they might even seem to be, and that's you know, they might even seem to be okay with it. But it's difficult for both parties. It's difficult for both parties. I don't want to neglect my partner. I want them to have a pleasant, satisfying, full experience. And when I know that I can only offer certain aspects of sexuality, um, that's not satisfying for some women. And I understand that. I'm not pointing fingers. It's me. I understand. But the silver lining, and there is one, it's a very bright silver lining. The things, when it first started, when it first started happening, and I went down the route of Viagra and Cialis and what are my options, and I'm way too young to lose my sexuality, and I was consumed. I guess what I'm saying is you're not aware of how much you think about sex, how much sex is part of who we are until its absence. Um, the mountain is clearer to the climber from the plain. Once you realize and you see where my preoccupation, my personal own we're all, I can't remember what the statistic was, but on average, a person, um, on average, male, female, it was slightly different, but not much different. Sexuality and intimacy. We think about that like 100 times a day. It may be a fleeting thought, but anyway, my perceptions and perspectives about my relationships with women and how much time was I, when I was sexually active, how much of my time was spent preoccupied with sex instead of intimacy, getting to know my partner, getting to know my wife, getting to know a girlfriend. How much of my preoccupation was surrounding sex. Um, and to have that removed and to come into relationships now in my life with really awesome, amazing women, I am now seeing firsthand in a really abundant way of what I was missing out on all those years when I was so preoccupied with the physical act of sex. Um, the intimacy and the connection that I feel with my female friends now, and I've been fairly forthcoming, transparent about, through the course of conversations, not because there was necessarily a romantic interest, but in the spirit of intimacy and communication and the things that they deal with, the things that I deal with, and the depth of those relationships, the depth and the substance of those relationships, having that sexual distraction kind of removed, not kind of removed, it's removed, um, has really opened me up um, to seeing the worth and the value and the beauty of intimacy and connection. Um, I would, I had gone through periods of my life where, and I believe they refer to it as semen retention, where even when I was single, I would abstain from even masturbation, nothing. And I look back on those experiences where I was practicing that, and even when I was practicing that, I was still preoccupied with sex. And it was interesting because a friend of mine, she offers courses, MJ Robertson. She offers courses about, like, for instance, unplugging. And one of the things was, one of the exercises in that was, when you unplug, um, try to notice how, even though you're unplugged, how often you think about not watching TV. The amount of obsession, for example, in my case, how often did I think about not having sex? And it just the how pervasive that thought stream is. And again, to have it removed, and um, the way I do approach new relationships on any level. It could be a stranger, a female stranger in the grocery store. It could be a female coworker. It could be somebody I do find very attractive. Who I would otherwise be inclined um, to pursue on a romantic level. I approach these interactions with a much broader, open, um, loving, uh, compassionate